Hello, everybody, and welcome to OpenExO Live. Really good to be with you on a Wednesday today. And we have Vanessa Belmonte with us. And you can see there are some awesome people coming up from all around the world in the coming weeks. We will be putting a call out for the next season of OpenExO Live. So if that's something you're interested, keep an eye open so you can be on the show and share your EXO journey. And before we get Vanessa up on screen, I do have a few words from some community members. The first one from Curtis, and he just said, a simple formula for project success: visionary, organizer, plus inspiring, plus kindness equals Vanessa Belmonte. She is that rare combination of skills and abilities, and I'm lucky to call her a friend and a fellow Floridian. Then from Karina, I have known Vanessa for many years. She was one of the first familiar faces I ran into in Miami. We share a love for art and the well-being of people. I miss our Friday meetings, which were a great underpinning for what is now Exponential Individuals. I hope Vanessa will continue to become more and more involved in the community. It takes a lot of Vanessas to change the world for the better. Next up, we have from Lars. Vanessa and I have been collaborating professionally in various roles and projects for about 6 years, both in the EXO Works core team back in the days, as well as during Vanessa's EXO certification, where I was her trainer. I have experienced Vanessa's mastery again and again as a creative consultant who brings purpose, storytelling expertise, cutting-edge branding insights, and solid business understanding into her work with clients, always with a smile. And then lastly, we have from Eric, Vanessa is one of those OpenExO souls whose path you'll want to run across in this lifetime. She was one of the first community members I reached out to when I joined, and we're still in touch today as a creative consultant through her firm Culture Climax, or co-hosting our Disrupt Live Clubhouse sessions. I have an opportunity to see her in action, helping fellow business owners solve their problems. She's a great Boston EXO business partner and served as a cohort mentor during our 2020 internship. I'm looking forward to even more collaboration with Vanessa in the months to come. And that's where I had to stop it. Vanessa's been around for a long time, and so there's many, many, many people who know her. And so with that, I want to just say, welcome, Vanessa. How are you doing this morning? This
afternoon now.
Afternoon. Yeah.
I'm so great, and I'm like just elated and so touched by those moving words. Wow. Thank you all. That was really special.
It's a pleasure. And so for those people who are new to the community, or maybe people who've never met you, can you just share a little bit about yourself? Your background, what brought you to the OpenExO community, and then what you've been doing, more recently as well.
Absolutely. So back in the day, my career really started working in radio, believe it or not. I worked in radio for 7 years, and I just kind of knew in my heart that it wasn't going to be more than that, because before I even knew the word disruption, I knew that radio was like kind of heading for disruption, right? So that made me step into my own space, and I actually launched my company, Culture Climax, in 2010 as kind of a blog, a creative outlet, a resource for culture and local events in Central Florida. And with that, I taught myself social media. I taught myself blogging, writing, designing, everything. And I just had an amazing team under me. And so I decided in 2015 to move back to South Florida. And that's when I met Salim and Lily at the time, the EXO team, but we didn't even have like an EXO team at the time. So really, I joined the OpenExO community by default because I was working with Salim as he launched the book the year prior, and he literally was being pulled in every direction. He was being sent on planes like 15 times, 20 times a month. So I was juggling as his booking manager, juggling all the contracts and all the travel and all the requests and inboxes. And with that, he ended up launching EXO Works, which is now EXO Solutions. And that's how we started really getting into working with the community. And it was only about like 200 people at that time, right? So we did in-person events, and that's where I saw Karina and Augusto and Corina and like so many amazing people, and really started becoming passionate about tech and specifically how technology is enhancing culture and improving society. So I was hooked. I was like, I'm here, like this is my tribe. So as booking manager, I then became marketing director of EXO Works. And now at that time we were doing like the first sprints. So Racine, Mexico was like one of my first sprints, which was great. Mexico City is so beautiful. I also worked on sprints for HP, for Procter & Gamble, Soreb, Ike, Accenture. So it was like just the very beginning of testing this model, right? And it was so much fun to, we didn't even have the reporter role at that time. We didn't have like specific roles that are now existing within the sprint, which is so great to see the evolution of it. So I was like a sponge. I was learning everything, soaking up all the incredible wisdom and insight from our community. And so that led me to then working with the OpenExO community, which is the broader branch, right? And so I was working with Kevin here, like on a daily basis, essentially working with certifications. We did community events, we did engagement campaigns, and a lot of HubSpot funnels. I definitely remember that. So I really met some of the most incredible people and was just onboarding. We were onboarding people so rapidly, and I was the person who was onboard them. And I like met every person who was joining the community at the time. And because of that, I've just made the most amazing friends in the community, and like obviously great colleagues, and just have learned so much. And then became, of course, certified. As Lars said before, I was certified EXO trainer, EXO advisor, and EXO consultant. So yeah, that was my experience with EXO for almost 6 years. And it was so incredible. It changed my trajectory of life and just my mindset and what I wanted to be. Like, I didn't even know that like consultants really were a thing. Like, I knew the consultants, were a thing, but I just didn't know to the capacity of how they worked, what they worked on. And so being introduced to the community really just opened my eyes of what's possible for me in my future. So then I've been working with Culture Climax, my company, over the past 2.5 years, 3 years, implementing some of those tools. And we'll get more into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've just reminded me of, remember way back in the day where every single person that came into the community, we spoke to every single one in those early days. Crazy, so crazy. So as you've shared, you pretty much came in by default, but then realized, man, this is amazing. This is the type of people that I sort of am attracted to, and essentially it's many purpose driven people, right? People who really started purpose. Many of our community members have their own personal massive transformative purpose. Their businesses will have an MTP as well. Do you mind sharing what yours is and how that sort of evolved? Because we know that it is an evolution. Our lives go through different times, and so that those often evolve as well.
Yep, so true. Mine is definitely has evolved and is continuing to evolve, because I feel like I've been putting so much energy into supporting clients with MTPs that I haven't really focused on mine. But the last time that I wrote my MTP out, it is inspire purpose and productivity through creativity and connections.
Awesome. And I mean, yeah, pretty much everything you do can actually stem back towards that, right? making sure that people are actually able to create organizations and do better, I guess, in the world, right?
Yep, and just be inspired to find those connection points. So what are those things that get you excited? Like what is your purpose and how do you find it? And then weaving creativity and connections to accelerate it and to bring it to life. So
no, absolutely. I mean, I guess that sort of is also starts speaking to the EXO model in a way. Like those connections are so important if you're going to want to start building a community, for example, right? And often communities form around common purpose or shared purpose. What would you say is some of your learnings, or like, I mean, you pretty much said EXO sort of shaped the way you've changed what you do. So what are some of those experiences that perhaps have shaped the way you work now?
Absolutely. So just broadly, and we'll get into that in additional questions later, but the attributes alone have really gave me a better understanding of the importance and the value of a framework and having a canvas, like a simple one sheet that you can bring to a client or someone you're helping, to just help them understand and like articulate and organize their business and their approach. So the EXO canvas really opened up my eyes in a way that made me dive into more canvases. I use the business model canvas a lot too. I used that in a workshop with some businesses a year or so ago, and it was so helpful. And they took it home and they were writing in it, and they're just like, where can I get more of these? I'm like, it's literally a free tool online. Like there's so many gems out there. So, it's just, there's so much to say about how something simple like a framework or a methodology or a canvas can really help people grasp what they're doing next, So I really highly always recommend filling out a canvas, or also on the other end, helping people create their own framework. How can you open source your content or open source your main focus, So I've turned some people's ideas into frameworks, if that's what's aligned with their business model, and just helping them understand it doesn't always have to be like an extensive white paper or a program, online program. Sometimes a simple canvas can really do wonders and really change the way that you connect with people or do business. So those are some of my two things. I'm definitely a weaver and a resource for people around me. So being around this community has really like just accelerated my understanding of not only the people and the work they're doing, but the initiatives that are out there. Like this community has made me a better weaver. Like I literally send company names or people's names on LinkedIn all the time to people. Oh yeah, you should check out this. Oh, you're doing this industry. Make sure you check out this and this initiative, or this and this organization, or this and this framework, or whatever it may be, because the more people see examples, I feel like the more they're inspired and understand that it's possible. Like those things are possible if they just like kind of get out of their own way and understand that like they don't have to overthink it. Like people are really out there producing wonderful initiatives, and so can they. When they see examples, it really like sparks something in them.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. It is sometimes you have people who will say, oh yeah, I think big companies can do that, or companies in Silicon Valley can do that, and it's really not the case. And I mean, it's one thing we try and do more and more of is to try and get a lot more EXO case studies out there, right? Of many different organizations, whether they are a bakery or a very high tech company. The ability to leverage the EXO attributes, but then also to leverage some of the exponential technologies, which people think, oh, that's going to be so expensive, and then you realize, now I know it's it's in the news a lot, and some people don't necessarily like it, but like ChatGPT is free. It's not it's you can't just take everything it says blindly, but that's a tool that pretty much any organization can actually use that, right? In some way. And there's so many other tools out there. It's quite difficult to actually find them all, right?
Exactly.
So that's so true. And also what you were saying just around frameworks. I mean, I know Salim often says, about the EXO model. It's not like it was new knowledge. It was just taking what was happening in the world and framing it, giving it a name, giving it a structure.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite hard for many people to do that. I mean, well, Salim's always saying it was damn hard to write the book. So, but yeah, so being able to help people with that, I think is a really valuable thing, because it isn't easy necessarily to distill something that's complex into a simple canvas.
Literally, it's like a synthesizer. Like you have to just, like you said, distill and listen, and but it's really helpful in the end when you can kind of name a framework or name an approach that's specific to you and your model. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned in your intro that you ended up like being a part of or working on or seeing a number of sprints, right? And of course, the EXO sprint being the sort of first product that came out of the EXO model to help organizations to actually drive more exponential thinking and actual initiatives. And right now you're actually working on a sprint that just started with Siemens Energy literally this week, so I'm sure it's pretty early days there, but do you have like any thoughts, any nuggets of wisdom? You're also looking back at those initial sprints and perhaps what's happening now, that people out there still are wondering, well, what is this sprint, or why is it really useful? It would be really interesting to hear some of your thoughts.
Absolutely. So I was kind of thinking on this, and something that I notice in the sprints, especially as a reporter, because you're kind of like, the team has nicknamed the reporter role internally as like the therapist, because you're really showing up for the participants in the sprint in a way that's not only, logical and has to do with the sprint, but it's like emotional too. You're really using your right and left brain if you're doing it right. And that's not only for the reporter role, but also for like coaches, like you really have to listen not only with your ears, but with your heart. And I think that's a really important aspect that I don't think is talked about enough in business in general, is like balancing that, left, right brain, or masculine, feminine approach, or, heart brain, or whatever it may be, how you want to approach it. But I think that balance is really key in order to like support participants who are going through a lot during the sprint. Like they have their normal jobs and then they have this really accentuated workshop, essentially. It's pretty intense. So so that's one thing. And then the second thing, what I've noticed, especially like with doing a lot of case studies, when I was working with the EXO team, you can tell a lot about a company, about by how they approach the post sprint. What did they do at the end of a sprint? So I know, Kevin, that so many companies, it's just like, all right, check it off the list, we did it. And they don't really take that wisdom. They don't take those ideas and that growth within their employees. They don't take anything and they don't really implement it. Sometimes they can the ideas completely. So you can really tell a lot about a company, about what they do after not only a sprint, but think about like a workshop or a training or a conference. If they just, close the book and go home like nothing happened, it's kind of unfortunate. And you can tell that they go back to their old ways. So I can really tell from this already. This is Siemens, not their first sprint, and they're truly invested and they really care about the future of energy. Like the vibe is really there. And obviously, not just on the vibe part, but just in general, you can really tell that they really care and they're really doing some amazing things.
No, absolutely. You know, it's actually something that that I was speaking with a community member about, you know, tracking post sprint, and especially, you know, looking way back at some of the you know, the early sprints, like you mentioned, the P&Gs, the Rossinis, the HPs. But the community member was saying, you know what would be really interesting if you could actually track the people, not the company, but actually look at what's happened with those people, and if the company like culture and ethos also changed, those people would most likely be with the company still. Mm-hmm. But if they found that wasn't the case, maybe those people have moved on, and it will not be an easy task to do, right? Because you know, there's privacy, etc., and if people have sort of left a company, and it might require a lot of stalking. No, but it would be so interesting to see, right? You know, I know from being at week 10 events after a sprint, or you know, hearing from some coaches, you know, there's often, you know, leadership saying these people who've been on the sprint, they've radically changed. So there's two things that happen: either that people say, hey, these people have become crazy and they need to go, or they say these people are amazing and need to be the next generation of leaders, right? And again, I think that comes back to what you were saying about, it depends on I guess the leadership at the organization at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was funny yesterday during our Align session, one of the Siemens employees who was part of a previous sprint, not this sprint, but a part of a previous sprint, shared an amazing presentation. And at the end, he goes, it might be kind of hard for you guys to return to your day jobs after this. And I was just like, it's so true. You know, it might be difficult for them to, you know, if they have to go back into a box, you're really literally being trained to think outside of the box and given all the tools and resources to do so. So I thought that was really telling to the transformation that happens with the individuals involved in the sprint as well.
No, absolutely. And you know, I was speaking with Gary last week, and one thing that he was speaking about is actually how the process of the sprint actually brings people, you know, into a state of flow, right? And I think that's also one aspect that, you know, once the sprint is over, you now have to do that yourself, right? And perhaps that can also be quite difficult. Is, you know, getting back into that feeling of flow that you maybe had, you with the team and really working on initiatives, you know, can really get you into that flow state.
Absolutely. I'm so into flow state lately too.
Sorry?
I said I'm very into flow state lately as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, if we could get every adult into a state of flow, can you imagine what we could do, right? You know, in the world. You know, I guess that takes me to asking you, you know, about, you know, the work you do at Culture Climax in terms of, you know, the storytelling work and the I mean, around flow, and you know, how do you leverage like EXO thinking in that space in order to actually make that impact?
Yeah, so we do a lot of like biz dev and business model development, social media, marketing, and just like nurturing of their ideas so they can come out to the world and just kind of make a lot more traction with what they're doing. So something that I like love, and I literally like have it as a favorite in my phone, and I pull it up all the time. I'm like, this is it. So the minimum viable product graphic, the one with the little skateboard and then the moped and then the scooter and then the car. I don't know if you know that graphic. It's my favorite graphic. Yeah. And so I always kind of try to say and implement the idea that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, and I'm such a perfectionist. I'm OCD all the time. So that graphic and just that approach to launching something is literally game changer. So like, if you just do it, I tell them, do the first little example, right? I'll give you an example too. So do like the first step. What's the first easiest step you can do to get to know the market, get to know your product, get to know your customers, get to know even the processes involved. Is it a manufacturing? Is it, you know, an event, in-person event? You have to find a venue. Like, start small, you know what I mean? Start small and work your way up and improve as you go. So an example of this is one of my friends and business partners is launching a travel product. So instead, and they're very smart, like they're so intelligent. So they already kind of understood the MVP without them even knowing what it is. But instead of just jumping right into manufacturing their own product, they bought some items on Alibaba and they launched an Amazon seller account. And they're first doing that so they can get to know the market, understand what sells well, understand the process of selling on Amazon or what it takes to have a manufacturer. So that's a great example of like minimum viable product. It's like literally the most important aspect that I preach to everybody. I'm like, try the MVP first. And my other favorite, I guess it's an attribute, but just act like way to implement exponential thinking and work into your career is, and your projects are, is community and crowd. Community and crowd is literally my favorite attribute. I like literally live by it. I'm always, you know, just sharing or wisdom or insights or ways to build community, because like that's your tribe, right? Your community and crowd is going to guide and support them and help them understand like where to move and how to move, right? So this typically starts with 3 things when it comes to community and crowd building. I have like my little recipe, right? So my first recipe is your avatar, or some people called it your customer persona, right? You have to like find that, who's that like client or who's that person that you've worked with that, or your customer, who's like your ideal customer. Like who, like maybe you already work with them, maybe you want to work with them. Put them on a Canva doc or a Word document or a PowerPoint, put a little picture, put their name, how old are they, what's their title at their job, what's their personality, what are their needs, what are their struggles, and literally speak to that person every time you're creating a product, you're writing social media content, whatever you're doing, developing a website, like have that person like stamp on your forehead. So you're always talking to them. It's so important. And I feel like that's something, that's definitely the first step in the process of developing community and crowd. The second one is value. I cannot stress enough to people how important it is to provide value to people, to your community, right? So whether it's, you know, informative content, that's many of my clients, it's content, right? So, you know, I think that one thing I really noticed about clients and working with clients, especially I work with small business owners, I work with entrepreneurs, I work with creatives. They don't understand that like what they're doing every day in their work is so amazing and valuable, and no one else is able really to do that, you know, in the way that they're doing it. But it goes over their head, like they don't even realize it. I'm like, oh, you're like, I have a flow state, a performance coach who focuses on flow state for executives. And I'm like, everything that you just talked to me about in a conversation could be 10 blog posts. Like, that's incredible, you know? So taking all of that knowledge and wisdom and those tools and examples and living case studies that are around your project or around your product are literally nuggets of content. So that's B, providing value. And then C, I think the last ingredient for that recipe is definitely authenticity. It's one thing to provide content, right? But I think as all of us, as consumers and viewers on social media and readers online and in person, I feel like we can tell when something isn't authentic. Like we just have this like intuition or this innate ability to kind of navigate, well, hopefully they've developed that, to navigate whether or not something just feels authentic or that person just is really living their purpose or really engaged and excited and knowledgeable about what they're doing. So those three things, avatar, value, and authenticity, literally are the key ingredients to building your tribe. So to bring it back to my example, the performance coach that I work with, she speaks at conferences. She has an amazing keynote, like amazing, and wants to do more like events and conferences, and wants to do like this big production, like an immersive space that you walk into at a conference. That's like all dark, and you have headsets, and like it's a production. She needs sponsors, she needs budget, she needs venue. And I told her, first thing, minimum viable product. So how can we do a smaller scale version of that? How can we do a local event, something that helps you test that model and build that community? And then of course I also told her, it's really important to create incredible content. Like she literally has amazing things. What is flow state? Why flow state? Examples of flow state. Who's living flow state? You know what I mean? And all of that is content. That's incredible, valuable content that me, as a person who's engaged and intrigued with flow state, I would follow her and read her blogs and be really engaged with her content. So those are good examples of how, it doesn't have to be this far-fetched technology or something that seems a little out of your range. Like those are great examples of how you can implement that exponential approach and that mindset into your company or your organization.
Absolutely. Vanessa, we have reached the bottom of the hour, which is a little bit probably past our time. But I always end off by asking for one thing to share with people who are watching. If there was just one thing, I know many people say I can't just give one thing, but if there was one thing that you want people to take away today, what is that one thing?
So that one thing is a question. So as much as we look to corporations when discussing the exponential approach, my question is, how do we inform and guide small businesses, creatives, or entrepreneurs on how to implement exponential attributes and mindsets? So that's my question.
Okay, well, that's a good question, and anyone who's watching should answer that question in the chat. And I think we can use that question for exactly that, for more engagement, more participation. So, Vanessa, it's been wonderful catching up with you again, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So great chatting to Vanessa. And I'm going to end off today with a little video about the new book. If you're interested in reading Exponential Organizations 2.0, a lot of new content, you can get it today. You can read it online. So do go do that. And we'll see you all next week.